Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Matt Chat. We are brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. I'm joined today from the University of Minnesota, head assistant coach, Luke Becker. Luke, welcome back. Thank you, brother. How are you?
Awesome. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, David.
It's interesting when you try to think about who's the right person to talk to at the right time of the year and the different subjects. And I was looking back on the summer Minnesota had, and obviously you'd have to be under a rock to not know what happened, but I don't think I've seen a lot of public talk about how it's all shook out. I talked to you a couple times privately. I talked to you and Agam. And there was an interesting conversation we had about Patrick McKee and why he did so well at Nationals versus the regular season. And I talked to you a little bit privately when you signed Cody Chittum, and then a little bit about NIL, with obviously with Gable and all that stuff. And I'm like, this would probably be a pretty interesting conversation to have for other people to hear about it. And so yeah, I think we'll dig into some of that. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the difference in the seasons. Okay, so this year we're back to a normal season. Obviously, you guys are COVID testing and that sort of stuff, but it's not as prevalent. It doesn't seem to be as terrifying to everybody. You don't see as many things being canceled or just not set up. And last year, the Big Ten had this unique situation where you guys were so good, you just scheduled duels with each other. I thought, as a person that is involved in rankings, that it was really smart of you guys because you couldn't lose to anybody outside of the Big Ten, and you had a lot more to lose by wrestling schools outside of the Big Ten than to gain, and it made the seedings a little crazy at Nationals. What was it like trying to navigate that last year?
Yeah, it was definitely tough. The hardest thing was really not knowing it. It seemed like it was so fluid and week to week or even day to day. Sometimes it was changing on whether we were going to have a full schedule, whether we were going to do just Big Ten only. And I think, fortunately for us with the Big Ten, and they decided to do it just with football, we kind of figured that's the way that they were going to go. And I think too, when you go back and look at it, because we did that, in all of, whether it was all the Big Ten duels, all the Big Tens, and even the NCAAs, right? Like there was nobody that popped or that spread it from team to team. There were some teams that got it on their teams and they maybe had to miss a duel or two and sit out, but it never got tracked from duel to duel or anything like that. So that was, pretty fortunate. But yeah, when especially for us, these early competitions and the competitions against the other teams is great for us to be able to go compete, see where guys are at, see what you need to work on. And we didn't have that last year. So it was like, January 1, we're jumping right into the Big Ten schedule, which, all of those duels are just so tough. So it was obviously quite a different season for us and for our athletes, but overall, I thought they handled it pretty well.
Yeah. And I'm sure you guys I shouldn't say you don't care about this, you don't focus on this, but the non-conference duels and the non-conference events like the Cliff Kings, the Scuffles, the Midlands, the duel, like the South Beach duels, all these big events, even non-conference duels, like when you wrestle Oklahoma State, that's a seeding connector or a rankings connector, which rankings become, in general, a lot of times relatively close to what the seeds end up. And so, almost like you guys have this own pod, right? And then like you have to judge, well, okay, David lost to Luke and Keegan O'Toole won. How does that work? How do you rank, how do you match these things up? So that part's really interesting. I talked to you and Agam. We were just talking randomly about a few things in Coralville. And I think for people that don't remember, Patrick McKee took third at Nationals. I think he had 3 or 4 pins. I mean, you would certainly remember that better than me. I saw Gable put out a hilarious quote or a hilarious tweet when they were talking about how many pins the team had. And he's like, well, McKee had a bunch and we all got 1 or something like that. I don't want to misquote him, but that was the general sentiment of it.
Yeah.
but I think McKee was like the 15, 16, 17 seed, something like that. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so I just asked you guys, I go, why did he wrestle so much better? And if I remember correctly, the answer was he's capable of that. He had some poor weight cuts during the season. And when you don't have as many matches, a couple poor weight cuts, when you have, say, 3 bad weight cuts out of 10 or 8 versus 17 or 18, those have a much more significant impact on your seedings and rankings going into nationals. And Egan was like, he had a perfect cut at nationals. He was super disciplined. Not saying he wasn't earlier, but just really maybe spend extra time focusing on that. I think sometimes, like, people in the media, and I've been on your side, not at that same level, but done it. But then I'm on this side now. We forget, like, these are kids, like these are 18 to 23-year-old kids. They're not just cyborgs and you just roll them out there. They do that. Well, I think you watch the NFL, you're like, why they have a bad game? Well, because somebody's mom's in the hospital. Like, yeah, stuff happens, right? Like, I think we forget the human part of it. So this doesn't have to be about Patrick, but in general, how do you make those teaching moments? Okay. So, like, I remember I had a kid one time that the first time he got down to weight, he cut it so badly. He was literally had his head in a garbage can, puking blue Gatorade up 20 minutes later. And I was like, I said to him, I'm like, this is how it can be, or it can be like this, and we'll help you, but you have to decide how you're going to do it. But I'm interested in guys who are doing it at the highest level. If, say, Patrick had a match that he won or lost, but didn't wrestle great, and he's just a microcosm of any of this. It's just, he's such an awesome example. How do you use that as a teaching moment?
Well, I think, there's no doubt about it. I think you're always telling these guys and understand, and it doesn't matter whether we're talking nutrition, whether we're talking sleep, whether we're talking, whatever it is, but your time management and the way you go about things are all going to affect when you step out there on the mat, and that's what we're constantly trying to get these guys to understand, what you're putting in your body, putting too much in your body, there's some guys on the other spectrum where they won't eat enough. You know what I mean? They stay too close to the weight, and that affects them when they go out there and compete. So it's, and everybody's a little bit different, on how much they can pull and still be effective when they step out there. So really it's trying to take each guy and understand, like, hey, this is where you're best when you're sitting around this on Monday, this is where you can get down and be effective when you step out there on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, whenever you're competing. Right. And I think that goes a lot with everything. Forever, I think everyone just felt like, whether it's weight cutting, whether it's training, whether it's, whatever it is, there's just one way fits all for everybody. And that's, what I mean? That's not the case. And I think that's what we've figured out and tried to get these guys to understand, like, what a 25 pounder needs to be at the beginning of the week is not the same as what a 197 pounder needs to be. Right. Because they could just so much more in practice, but really just, getting these guys to understand, man, if you're doing all the little things right leading up to it, whether it be nutrition, your sleep, all that stuff, look what, just using McKee for an example, and it wasn't that he was doing all those things wrong. He just,
I didn't mean to imply that, but
yeah. It was just, he finally kind of figured out his system and where he needed to be by the time we got to the NCAA tournament. And once he did that, if all these things are in line and you're doing all these little things right, look at what can happen. Right.
Yeah.
And especially in the Big Ten and, at NCAAs, like the margin for error is so slim and the competition is so close. Like, if you can have the edge because you did all the little things right, whether it's, again, your sleep, manage your weight, what I mean? Rest in your body, all that stuff. If you do all those little things right, man, you can go out there and have the tournament that you want to have, or that he was able to have there too.
Well, when you get to this top level, right, like, all of these guys feel like they're at the most one scramble apart, right? Like, which is obviously huge. You could put me on my back, I put you on your back. That's a 12-point swing, which is obvious. Yeah. But a lot of times it's, you can ride me for 4 seconds longer than I can ride you. It's like it's the margin between, I don't want to say error, the margin between victory and defeat is so small. It's so just minute that, like
Yeah.
you said, like I got some extra good sugars in me. I got 15 minutes extra sleep. I watched film and just focused mainly on me. But the one thing that I'm going to try to take away Luke Becker's favorite thing on offense, because I know if he can't get to this collar tie or this whatever consistently, he has to reset. And every time he has to reset, I'm eventually going to get what I want. You know, those kind of things, just those little tricks. And
Yeah.
like you said, like, it's interesting to me just because, you know, I was around Patrick a couple of years ago when he was in high school at the Olympic Training Center. And I was struck by his humility because, you know, he had won a lot of stuff at that point. And he walked up, introduced himself to me like I was somebody he was supposed to meet, and I wasn't supposed to know who he was. I'm like, I know who you are, stud. It's nice to meet you, you know. And
Yeah.
so to hear somebody like that, like you said, figure it out. And it's not a criticism of what he'd done all year. It's, hey, I thought I could eat this much and that wasn't enough, or I thought I could eat this much and it was too much, or I tried to be a nap guy and I'm not good at napping, or, you know, like tried to fall asleep with the TV on, all these little things. I think sometimes people, like if I had said, if you had said to me, well, what do you think was the difference with him? I'd have been like, I don't know, maybe he got to nationals and just, he's one of those cut it loose guys, right? Because Mitch was like that. Mitch will chest wrap you when you jump into the stand, you know? So like, that would have been a reasonable guess, but, you know, completely wrong, right?
Well, not completely wrong. You know, I think there's a lot of factors too. And I think when you look at, you know, did he just manage his weight and do some of those little things better than he maybe was, but also he finally got back to the Pat McKee style of wrestling that made him great, right? Like if you look out throughout the year, and that's why I think these early tournaments, these open tournaments, these non-conference competitions are so key, because you learn throughout the year, right? Like everybody gets better throughout the year. And it's one thing to be in the room. You're getting better when you're in the room, but when you get out there and you're wrestling competitions and you see, you know, what little adjustments you need to make. And he started to go back to it at the Big Tens. It wasn't quite there yet. He hadn't defined it, but if it was his riding, right? Like he was a hammer on top at the national tournament. And that's what's one thing that's always been great about Pat and one of his strengths, but he just wasn't, he hadn't put it all together yet. You know, you could see him starting to do it at the Big Tens, even though he didn't have the tournament and the matches that he wanted. But man, those couple weeks that he started to put it together at the Big Tens, and then 2 weeks after at the national tournament, I mean, he was riding everybody, and he was just a hammer, and he was staying basic. You know, he wasn't all over the place. He was running that half ride that he does, which he's always been great at, but he had just kind of got away from it. And then he really started focusing on it and getting back to it. And you could see what, you know, obviously we all saw what happened when he started doing it at the national tournament.
Riding to me is a very interesting thing because there's all these different theories, and I'm interested to hear yours because you're a guy that was tough on top. You know, Minnesota is known as a school that will mat wrestle with you. Maybe it's this exact question, but how much of being good on top is skill and technique, and how much of it is just mindset? Like, I don't care how many times you stand up, I'm going to mat return you one more time.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a little of both, right? Like you can be great on top, but if you're not willing to be gutsy and be willing to put the effort into, again, returning these guys, that it's, you know, so much easier to, when a guy gets to us, I can maybe return him once, but if I got to return a guy 3, 4, 5 times, am I willing to really use that energy and effort to be able to do it? We always go back to that match with Ness and Oliver in the NCAA semifinals. I think he mat returned him 16 times, if I remember.
Oh, wow.
And that's what won him the match, right? Like he won the match because he returned him, I think 16 times. He picked him up and put him back on the mat. And you have to, I mean, that takes a lot of energy to be able to do that, right? But I mean, that's the way you have to be. Now, obviously, there's no doubt about it. You have to know what you're doing there as well, too. But yeah, I think, you know, you have to, and I would say the same for bottom, right? Like when you're underneath, am I willing to stand up more times then this guy's willing to bring me back to the mat. And it's a battle of wills. Who's going to keep coming up or who's going to keep returning them? Sooner or later, somebody has to say, it's a little too much work. I think I'm not going to be able to get away in this period. Or I think it's, you know what I mean, too much work. I'm just going to cut this guy. And we talk about that all the time, that really it's your will against his. Who's going to quit first?
No, it's fine. I think the other part of that too is, let's say you're a better takedown guy than me, right? You're better at leg attacks. You're better at leg defense. You're better at scrambles. Mat wrestling is the equalizer, right? Like if I can just do really good position, thumbs down inside, vertical collar ties, all these, head position, all the different lines of defense, when you attack, scramble enough, the referee forgot who started the attack, and, so I don't get hit for stalling. And now it's okay. Now we're in the 0-0, we're in the rides, right? And now even if it goes 1-1, when it gets to overtime, the guy that's better on the mat has the advantage. When it's in the 7 minutes, the guy who's better on the feet has the advantage, because, generally we're going to spend 6 of our 7 minutes on the feet. Because like you said, most of these guys don't commit to 16 mat returns. Now I'm gonna have to go back and watch that match, because I'm sure you're right. That match meant a lot to you, and it didn't to me, at least as much, so to think about that statistic, that's crazy. But so that mindset, like, do you guys practice? I mean, obviously skill and technique, like stepping, lifting hips in, where your grip is, when you laying in a deep way, chopping an arm, whatever it is, push the elbow forward to keep, whatever it is you guys do, right? Yeah. You can watch film and figure out what you guys are doing. You don't have to somebody explain it to you. But are you guys doing drills where, like, hey, this guy's standing up for 30 seconds and you're just drilling him as hard at the ground as many times as you can?
Yeah, we spend a lot of time on mat returns. And because again, whether you're talking the 30-second goes or there's 10 seconds left in a match, 20 seconds, you got that point is huge, and the good, when you're wrestling the best competition, that 1 point is a big deal in those matches, whether it's, ride them for 5 more seconds to get the ride time, or ride them for 5 more seconds to not give up the point, So we spend a lot of time on those drills. Guy fires up, you return them, because we think it's, outside of just the technique, it's important to be able to continue to have that attitude, to pick them up and return them, pick them up, return them, pick them up, return them.
Yeah, I think it just builds mental. I mean, you can't be in wrestling at the Division I level and not be physically tough to a certain extent. Yeah. I always joke, like the time I came out there and like did the walk and talk, we were talking about doing the stuff tied to the Nationals in Minnesota, which obviously didn't happen, but like I ran in a couple of your guys, and I'm completely drawing a blank now. Who's the kid that started out as an 87 pounder and is now wrestling 213? That wrestles for you guys.
Oh, Zilmer.
Yeah. Zilmer, like the nicest human. He's got like a 50-pound dumbbell in one hand and just shakes your hand with the other one. I'm like, these guys are tough. And they're nice. And he almost broke my hand. One thing. So, let me jump over to like with the success of McKee and obviously Gable at NCAAs, and we're going to get on the Olympic stuff, but then to go land like a Cody Chittum, right? To get a guy that, it doesn't matter what anybody says, like everybody wanted that guy. It doesn't even matter who you had in your lineup. You find a way to get him. And, Gable was a guy like that, right? And you guys have lost out on guys like that. That's the nature of recruiting. You can't have a good recruiting class unless you lost out on some really good guys. Tell me about that process, and tell me about maybe the success you guys have had here, since March. If you think that had any direct impact on it, or it wasn't always kind of going here and that was just some sprinkles on the ice cream cone.
Yeah. Obviously recruiting's been huge for us. I can't talk specifically on certain recruits,
Sure.
But
fair enough.
There's no doubt about it that, the success we've had and the style of wrestling and the excitement of the way our guys are competing and their mentality and the way they look at wrestling has definitely helped out in the recruiting piece of it. I think for us and it's always been this way, right? Like we want to find the right type of kid that fits our Minnesota style, Minnesota attitude, right? We want guys that are going to go out and wrestle wrestle hard and score points, and I think for us is just finding those type of guys. And it's not going to be all the exact same type of guy. You look back, our most recent years, if you look back at 2014, when we lost by a couple points at the national tournament, going up and down our lineup, they were so different in the styles of the way the guys wrestled. But the one thing that they were intense when they were out there on the mat. You got a Dylan Ness who's flipping guys through, but he was always wrestling hard. You had the Dardanes, they were the, club you and bang. And I think, for us, that's what we're looking for when we're going out and getting these guys. And I think guys are drawn to that. They want to go to a program where they feel like they can compete hard and be a part of something, but we're going to take where they're great and we're going to build off that. It's not, we don't, how do I say this? We're not trying to create everyone to wrestle the exact same or wrestle the same exact style. These guys that we're recruiting are great for a reason. And what we want to do is when we get them in here, we want to build off that. And we want to, whether it's they're a great leg rider, we want them to be the most intense leg rider they can be. So just build off of that, but there's no doubt about it. And again, I love the way our guys wrestled at the national tournament last year. The way they competed up and down the lineup, and still not where we want to be, right? But I think people can see where we're heading. I think they can see the direction of the guys we have in the room and the way our guys compete, and they want to be a part of that.
Yeah, I obviously, your guys' story of the summer was Gable, but before you got to the summer, there were some things, sometimes like you do something ahead of time, and then when the next thing happens, it gives you a different perspective. So I had gotten a chance to come up there, do a walking tour, do some interviews with you guys, and just visit with you guys. And what struck me is, and it's that whole Minnesota nice thing, how generally nice human beings you guys are, all the way from your staff to the guys at Pinnacle. You were kind enough to let me just piggyback and watch a practice over there. I mean, that place is incredibly impressive with the hammers they're putting out, and it's almost all Minnesota alumni, so I think maybe exclusively, I don't want to, keep anybody out if not, but just predominantly University of Minnesota former wrestlers. Yeah. And we usually mention Pinnacle probably once every 2 months on our other podcast with Grant Turner, because we talk about how kids at that level are getting coached by NCAA champions and Olympic medalists and how crazy that is. But on the outside, Gable Steveson does not fit that Minnesota nice profile. He's got a little edgy to him. He's very media savvy. He can do the yes or no sir thing, but he also knows how to tweet Dana White. He's got it figured out. I mean, I'm saying like not 100, but he's very wise for his years. And I think he appeals to a different group of kids that are also really tough kids and will wrestle hard, but maybe instead of being G-rated, it's PG-rated, and, just nothing bad, right? Your mom could still sit there and watch it with you, but just, it's a little different. It's a little saltier. It's a little edgier. And when you watch, when it's from doing the round off to the backflip to just, the running out right after he gets a pin or something like that, it's not anything mocking anybody else. It's just him celebrating. Minnesota or Gable or whatever the case may be. Did you sense, his energy, we'll start with that. What kind of, he's got to be a leader in a lot of ways, the obvious one, and he's kicking people's tails around the world, but right? But yeah, how is that energy maybe a little bit different in the room? And it seems like you guys have let him be him and not, like you said, not force him to be the stereotypical mold of somebody from Minnesota.
Yeah, it's been great. He really, when he first got here, he came in as really a 17, 18-year-old kid, and he's grown a lot over the last couple of years. And, I think for him, he is a showman. He wants to go out there and he wants to put on a show, from, beating guys as bad as he can to also, doing some of the other, the other stuff he does on the mat. It's exciting. I think fans, I think fans want to see that. I think fans want to come to an event, and not to be disrespectful, but they want to see people, they want excitement when they come to the event. They want to see people put on a show. They want to, and see people having fun out there when they're competing, and not just so focused on just the wins and losses, if that makes sense, right?
Like just the moves, just like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to do this technique. It's like smile while you're doing it, like celebrate, right?
Yeah. Celebrate, have fun. And I think that's the one thing Gable kind of, brought to us a little bit. And it's been great. Our fans love it. The fans across the country love it, so it's been good. It's been, different. We've, even when I competed here, it was, and I'm still kind of, I'm a little old school. I'm this way. You win the match, you shake your hand, you get it raised, and you run off, and you go back and do whatever cool down routine that you need to do, but again, I think now just the fans love to see some emotion from the athletes, and I think Gable's helped bring that out with us in our program a little bit, which has been awesome. And he really is. It's crazy. He's so wise in that area of building his brand, and the uniqueness and what he's brought from. There's just so many, from the social media to the after his matches to some of that stuff, and it's all part of that's who he is. I don't think it's part of the show, but he's so good, and he's so unique at what he brings on that end of the wrestling side of it, and the social media and the brand, and developing his unique brand.
Well, there's a lot of people that just love sports, right? Like I'm a person, like I'm not a huge baseball fan, even though I live in St. Louis, but I'll watch Game 7 of the World Series, right? Like there's a lot of people that maybe like maybe you're a guy like that with football. Like I'm not going to watch every game on Sunday, but I'm going to watch the Super Bowl. I think somebody like me that does what I'm doing now in this area, I like watching people in highly stressful win or go home situations and see how they perform, and see if there's anything I can steal from that. Like why did this person do better? Why did this person not do better?
Yeah.
But you said like, you were older school, run off, I can imagine that team you had when you guys had 10 All-Americans. And if a couple of you guys, to me, the person that seemed like he would have done this would have been Damian Hahn. I could be wrong, but just, you would know better than me, all the personalities, but.
Well, he put the nail in the coffin, right? Like who else would have thought about that, but he did it. He bent over. I don't even know how you could think about that. You just finished your match. You won your final match. He bends over, puts the nail in the coffin. I mean, you hit it right there.
But you remember that to this day, and there's, people that there are those moments. And like you said, to have the wherewithal, right. To be so present that you can, drop from fifth gear down to second, from wrestling your face off to then doing that stuff.
Yeah.
People do get fired up about it. And it's not a disrespectful thing to anybody else. It's just, our team did this, or in Gable's case, like at the Olympics, I did this, and, I was literally had COVID during the middle of the Olympics, which if you're ever going to get sick, that's the best time to do it. Cause you just lay in bed and watch TV. There's stuff on at 3 a.m. We were talking about it from a business standpoint, and I wouldn't, if you want to answer this, you can, but we were talking about how much money he made because an extra second, an extra 2 seconds, that he got that done then and not a second or two later. And how that changed that man's life. To us, we're like, well, he's still an NCAA champion. He'd be Olympic silver medalist. In the wrestling world, that's amazing, right? But he's not going to be on the Today Show for that. He's not going to be on, like Wheaties boxes or that kind of stuff, right? I'm sure you guys have talked, and, maybe it's not specific, but what struck me was, we can talk about how he got off the guy and the referee shouldn't have blown the whistle, but just, he didn't give up. Like, how many times have you seen guys, they act like they're kind of trying, but they're not really trying.
Yeah.
He was genuinely hitting holds, and that match went back and forth, and, it's like he was winning, and then the other guy gets on top, and you're like, oh no, like this is not good, Did you talk to him all about his mindset during the match? And if you did, like, I think a lot of us would just love to hear like the real stuff. I mean, you know, you say what you need to do to the Today Show, and then you say something different to your coach, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like, you know, Gable, he's a competitor, and he expects to win every time he goes out there. And, you know, when we talked a little bit about it, and obviously I wasn't there with the COVID protocols and everything, but Coach Eggum and Brandvold were over there with him. But yeah, it was like, you know, he was, you know, he's usually so calm, so composed, and to be going in at halftime, I think he was winning 5-0, I believe it was, you know, and really you're kind of controlling the match. And then, you know, for him, he gives up that one takedown, and then, you know, those couple turns, and then all of a sudden it went from like, geez, I had this thing, I was controlling everything, to how did I, you know, what happened here? How am I down? But he was like, you know, and this is exactly his exact words. Like, I didn't come over to the Olympics and spend 3 weeks in Tokyo, basically like stuck in this hotel room to get second place, right? Like he was going to find a way to win. And that's what, you know, that's what champions do. And it's crazy the way it even worked out, but it was never, you know, in his mind, it was like, I'm going to find a way to win this thing, right? Like, I didn't come over here just to get second place. So it was pretty amazing that at that moment, with 13 seconds left, that he can even think about, you know, we're all thinking, right, you're going to need a 4-point move, or you're going to need a takedown to a turn. But in his mind, he's not thinking takedown to turn. I'm going to take him down, and then I'm going to cut him, which we all know we can't do. He's going to get up off him, right? And I'm like, no, you can't do that. And then all of a sudden the ref blows a whistle and it comes up. But even then, with 6 seconds left, like,
But that's the ultimate. No. All right, let's go. You know, like,
yeah. So, but no, you know, when we talked to him about it, it was like, he's like, yeah, I mean, I think for a second there, it might've been like, oh man, you know, second's not terrible, but it was like, and then he said, like, it was like, I didn't come all the way over here. I haven't trained all the time I've put in, you know, to get second place. I'm gonna go get it.
Yeah, I mean, to watch that whole thing happen. And, you know, what struck me about it, though, is I was trying to think of the last time that Gable was losing a match and came back and won. And I couldn't think of one. Like, I remember when he had the 2 out of 3s with Gwiz, and he was winning and got behind and lost. But normally he just kicks the crap out of everybody, right? So it's like, he's not being tested mental. It's a credit to him that he's just smashing guys, right? I don't mean that like to take anything away from it, right? Like, you know, if you're so much better than me that I never test you, that's a credit to you and an insult to me, not the other way around. But all those guys, when you're at the Olympic level, right? Like, you're not coming from behind 80% of the time. You're winning 99% of the time, right? And it's just when you get to this elite level, like when a Luke Becker is wrestling a Jared Lawrence, like those guys of similar skill levels, somebody has to take the lead on somebody, and that person may not hold on. The whole thing about letting the guy go is a whole different conversation, but I was just super impressed by his composure of I see 3 things happen, and the one he did is the rarest. One is person puts together a bunch of series of movements and scores. The other one I see is guys faking a bunch of stuff, but not really trying. And the one you see a ton of is guys just doing these dumb, go for broke, ridiculous, haven't worked since the seventh grade moves, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge testament, obviously, to him, but also to your guys' training. Like, in that series, if you go back and look at it on film, he's a Minnesota guy. That's a Minnesota guy. And if I was Minnesota's media people, I would splice that in with all the other takedowns. When people are wearing your colors with the M on it, I'd be like, this guy didn't do anything different than what we've been doing for years. He just did it at the highest level, under the highest level of stress, and made it happen.
Yeah.
You got to say this. If you made John Smith stand up and cheer for you, did something right. You know, obviously, John's a USA guy, but, you know, he wants to win. You know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's, you know, and that's what, especially like for a guy like that, who's just, like you said, he's never in those positions. So you have to create those in the practice room, right? You have to create those in the practice room, those situations, those, you know, I'm down by this, I got to score, because he's not getting them. He's not getting them out there on the mat like
Yeah.
the rest of the guys are, right? He's just beating guys.
Mason Paris didn't push him last year. Mason Paris is an incredible wrestler with a national level thing. And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but the other thing is he's a heavyweight. Normally, like you go, okay, hey, Becker, you're killing everybody. Well, I'm just going to put you with the 197 pounder, you know, and now you're going to struggle just on the size part. I mean, the other part too, and I'll stop interrupting, but Gable's so skilled. I think that's the other thing. He's most heavyweights, and they'll be mad at me, but there's a lot of leaning and pushing and shoving, right? Probably more so than any other weight class, right? I'm not saying there aren't super skilled guys, but the super skilled guys stand out more than like a 25 pounder, you know?
Yeah.
So like I'm sorry, you were talking about creating those situations. Go ahead. I apologize.
No, for sure. You know, and for him, he is that skilled. He can, and he proved it there, right? Like he can, when he needs to score points, he can score points. He's so fast, snaps, round corner. Like, I mean, he can score almost in any instant when he wants to. But again, he just, in those tough situations, he doesn't get in them. So we have to try to create those in the practice room, you know, and I think that's what, you know, over the years, we've tried to do a good job of, is create those situations so that, because at some point, most of us or all of us are going to be in that situation, right? I'm down. I need to score. You know, it's the impossible, probably not going to happen. But if I've never practiced it, it sure isn't going to ever happen, right?
Yeah.
So you have to create those situations, and you know, the mindset of the guys be like, no, I'm down by 3, however many seconds left, there's not a chance. Can't be, right? Like, again, I talked to a lot of our fans and, you know, and alumni in Minnesota, and you look at the Gable match and everybody talks about, man, it's happened a few times, you know, that not obviously in the Olympic level, but the Jason Ness match with, I think there was 13 seconds there. You go back to Damian Hahn. I think that one year he scored in the last like 8 seconds on 2 difference, the finals and the semifinals, right? Like, so, I mean, there's so many, times over the years where big things have happened like that. And part of it's because you put these guys in those situations, you create these situations in the practice room, and sometimes it ain't perfect. It ain't gonna be a perfect shot. It ain't gonna be, you know, touch and go. You got to just find a way and create something and put yourself out there and make it happen.
Yeah. I vividly remember the Ness, you know, Daniel Dennis match. Right. And, you know, and some of these guys, just like you're saying, find a way. There was, I won't bring up the name, but there was a 133 pounder that wrestled one of your guys that like goes out of bounds and psychs himself up, and just everybody in the whole place knows he's going to shoot a double leg, and he figured out a way to get to a double leg. And like those guys' mentality that's what separates guys like you from 99% of the world. These guys that have won this stuff. I was telling somebody the other day, I go, the coolest part of this job is I get to talk to people that are so high level that they don't even think they're high level. That's just their level. That's what they do every day. I mean, right? Like you coaching an Olympic champion, you're like, that's part of my job, right? Like that's part of what I'm supposed to be doing. You know, it's not an arrogance thing. It's not like, yo, I'm the dude. I'm like, it's like, no, like that's what they pay me for. You know, like Trevor Brambold couldn't be a nicer human being. He's got to be the low key MVP of that whole thing, because I just imagine how many times he works out with Gable and gets snapped like that every day.
Right, for sure. He was his partner over there for 3 weeks.
Yeah, right. I mean, and just that's got to be like a different level of joy for somebody like that. That's true. Like everybody's a part of it, but like, man, I put hands on this dude every day. He put hands on me. Like there's something special about that relationship. So that sort of leads me into the RTC. Like Schlater's obviously a super humble but highly accomplished guy, and I told you guys this privately, but I'll say it publicly. I think the one, if I had a suggestion to you guys, is you don't toot your own horns enough. You don't promote yourselves enough. I don't think it's in your nature. You probably, when you couldn't afford him because he's going to make too much money, but you need to hire Gable as your publicist. You guys would be great. You know, but you look at the overall success of your RTC, how many guys are medaling at like all the different weight classes. And then this is the cherry on top, right? Like you got it done, right? Like, And I tell people this, I couldn't have been more wrong when this all started. I thought colleges would drive success of RTCs, but it's obviously the other way around. The college kids want to go where there's already these senior level guys and girls they can work out with. So was the impact, I guess, maybe speak for Minnesota or for Slater or whatever, for your guys RTC to have an Olympic tournament like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge, right? We've been very fortunate and to be able to have the people to support our RTC that support our RTC, because it doesn't happen without those guys. But it's huge. It's huge on our college program, to be able to have these guys in the room. And I think we were second at the Olympic trials. We had 7 RTC guys qualify for the Olympic trials that were down there competing, which is just unbelievable. And every one of those guys is in our room. They're working out with our young guys. They're helping them out, helping develop technically, obviously helping on the mental side of it, and just helping them to navigate through the college lifestyle, college, just what it takes to be
the challenges, the peaks and valleys, right? Like they've been through it. Yeah.
Yep. And they're kind of mentors to these guys, right? Like they get to go pick their brains, not outside of just us 4 coaches that are there. They get to go, sit down and talk with these guys and pick these guys' brains who are still competing on the international level, obviously, but who most of them had just recently got out of college. So they understand what these guys are going through. So it's been a huge thing. It's a huge thing for recruiting. Like you said, the top guys, they want to go to a program where they know they can win a national title, but where they can go and they want to have international success too, right? Like, I mean, it's always been guys' goals to go and, I think the best guys always want to, say they want to be an Olympic champ. They want to win a national title, be an Olympic champ. And I think now more than ever, like it's a reality for these guys saying like, okay, is there a place I can go where I can have both? And for us, it's huge to, for what Gable did to be able to go and, have the year that he had both collegiately and then, afterwards over the summer too, and win Olympic gold. It's been huge because guys can see that like, yep, this is it. This is the place where I can go and I can accomplish my dreams on both ends.
Yeah. And, like obviously shout out to all the supporters, literally the financial supporters of your RTC, because people can say whatever they want. You have the best coaches in the world. You need money. You need money to recruit athletes. You need money to pay coaches. You need money to travel. You need money for all this. So shout to them. Kevin Jackson was on the show last week and we were talking about, his move over to Michigan, but also the fact that he was saying like, look, he goes, I was part of those teams in the 90s. And he's like, we like to think we were the best teams ever. And he made a quick argument why they were. He goes, quoting with these cats now, man, we got to give it up to them. I think the overall, and our pod's on USA Wrestling Network, so this is a complete self-shout, but the fact that making the Olympic team now, so many more people are winning medals. Like I think USA Wrestling gave out over $900,000 to that Living the Dream Fund. There was a while there where like I was looking up the history, there's like 1 medalist or maybe 2 medalists. And, now this year, like freaking between women's and men's freestyle, I think it was like 9 or 10. Like there's only 12 weights. Like that's crazy. And there's people that are getting bronze medals that are upset. We're upset that like people shouldn't be, but like, why did Dake only get bronze? Right. Like, why did David Taylor lose to Yazdani, like in the world, like the expectations, the bars have been set so high. I wanted to get one last topic in with you. And I know we got short time and you got to get to practice. NIL, you might have the most interesting perspective on it in the country. I mean, for name, image, likeness, athletes can make their own money, but a lot of these guys are doing like clinics or like, making deals with like chicken restaurants. You and me talked about it, like, well, Gable might stay, because he can figure this out. What's your perspective on NIL as a guy that probably would have gotten paid back in the day, and then now as a coach and the wise sage that you are?
Yeah, I think you're always a little bit coming in. I was always a little nervous about it, a little bit worried on what it was going to do. There's obviously for Gable it's been huge, and and he deserves it, right? Like he's worked his butt off to be able to put himself out there and market himself and do these things. So it's pretty unique opportunity. You know, it's huge for us, obviously, you know, getting Gable to come back. And I would say, you know, I would say the NLI definitely maybe assisted in that, where he's, you know, he's able to make this year while he's still competing, you know, but other than that, you know, Gable really, he's coming back because he wants to help out you know, he wants to help us win another national title, or be in the hunt for a national title. And then he wants to help out, you know, the university and the program as well too. And yeah, it's just, I think it's going to be a game changer for a lot of these, guys, you know. And when you look at college wrestling, there's 9.9 scholarships to go around. So money isn't, it's, you know, for the most guys, there's a handful of guys that are on some good money, and everybody else is struggling to get by. So anything you guys can do, whether it's, you know, a $500 clinic here, you know, or sell some t-shirts and make a little bit of money that way to help them pay for their college, or just live the, you know, the day-to-day lifestyle of a student athlete, because they don't get to go out and have, if you want to be competitive, have a regular job. So I think that's where it's going to help out our sport. Is there going to be a ton of guys getting rich? I don't.
Probably not. Yeah.
But is there going to be some guys that are going to help make some money to help them have, you know, to not worry or have the stressors of how am I going to pay for college? How, you know, or mom and dad going to have to help me, all that stuff, where they can make a little money and just help them out for the day-to-day stuff that they need to be able to train to be a college athlete.
You aren't saying this. I'm saying this last statement. The analogy that I've made is, this is like all these athletes are like waiters and waitresses, and now the restaurant's finally just letting them keep their tips. And then the restaurant's the NCAA. Like, the NCAA isn't spending a dime extra. They're just letting these kids keep what they deserve. And for you guys, it makes it easier. You have a great program. You have a marketable program. You have alumni that want to support. I support the schools. I applaud the schools that are helping these athletes do this, do it legally. The NCAA should not get any pat on the back. All those fat cats are still keeping their money. There's a bunch of senior vice presidents do nothing over there that are still living off the backs of athletes that are busting their brains out, like guys like you did back when winning national titles, you know, and they're making money off of it. I know you got to run. You're one of my favorite guys to talk to. Like, when you look serious and then how you are as a person are polar opposite. So I appreciate it. I appreciate your kindness to me over the years. I wish you the best of luck. I know you got some big duels coming up soon. And if I don't see you sooner, I'll see you in Detroit. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good. That was great, David. I appreciate it.
Thanks everybody for watching and listening. We'll come back next week.